customer is going to be good for me. But I can tell you, already being a Verizon customer, I have coverage where they say I don't have coverage, right? So some of the givens in the sort of packet, I think you ought to ask them pretty specifically to go like, how do we know that the givens that you're giving us are valid? Because in the real world, it looks like you're kind of starting off on the wrong foot with some needs assessment that doesn't seem to exist as a Verizon customer. Now, I won't say that there aren't holes around town. I'm just saying that the depictions don't jive with my reality, which sort of makes me feel a little funky about the other things and to go like, if I can't buy in on that, now do I have to buy in on everything, or does it put the whole thing in question? So I hope that sort of practical feedback, and I can't be the only Verizon person here, right, to go like, we all know that there's problems and that there's not problems in some areas, but to go, this packet doesn't seem to line up with that. Also a little weird that we're only talking about one carrier as if like that's the only choice that either the town or the public has. I think really this conversation is best done as communications improvement, right, if we're going to have this conversation. But I think in terms of this particular CUP application, it just doesn't make sense for me to go through all the details because I have nothing to measure it against, right? I can't measure whether or not this is compatible with the agricultural land practice that doesn't exist because that's the only thing that's allowed in town, you know, in terms of even having a CUP application. And the thing was titled CUP application, like we saw this at prior meetings too, that we were supposed to be reacting to an application. The initial reaction to somebody that brings you something that says, I'm applying for a conditional use permit for something that there is no possible permit for is, the answer is no, but we'd be happy to talk to you about zoning, right? But somehow we've accepted and staffed and even burnt staff time and analyzing something that under our current laws is zero chance of being approved, right? Because there's no avenue for it. So this is just weird. So again, I hope we will do everything to make that one's applicant. And in this case, by allowing new uses in the C1 zone, you're basically saying, because there's no guarantee they're going to do anything, right? The only thing that will come out of this process is we know that their land will be more valuable because they could do something in the future, right? So this process is really about like changing property value. Only when we get to things like actual applications to do the actual construction do we get to what people are talking about in the public.
No one else has signed up. Last chance. That's the last public hearing. Yes, come on up, please. Both. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a section as well. I certainly understand the need to be expeditious when it comes to, you know, setting a project and meeting a need in an efficient fashion. I do agree with the gentleman who spoke before as well that there is sort of an element to this coming so quickly that it doesn't necessarily, I think, allow for a larger view of, you know, acceptable alternatives or any other potential use that may be looking for. Especially, I especially agree with an increase in not only Verizon services, that's what I have, but additionally cell phone service throughout downtown, I think is incredibly important to this town. But I also think that understanding, well, why are we setting these particular parameters for this particular space, and exploring alternatives to make the town better and potentially work out any sort of thing I definitely agree with. But certainly I would hopefully have a little bit more time to analyze not only, well, why are we putting the specific parameters around this as an individual, but also if the facts of the matter that have been presented are, you know, something that's able to be responded to. That's more or less what I'm hoping, and I hope that you all will be able to agree with me on that general premise, and hopefully I feel like an involved part in the process of the planning rather than just sort of like planning is happening to me. I accede.
Thank you. Welcome.
It seems to me there's just a couple of very common sense things here. First of all, this is a town, and this is a town where there obviously should be no agricultural districts. Secondly, this particular town, being fairly remote from other business districts, depends very heavily on communication, especially the type of communication we're talking about. So I want to thank staff for proposing this type of situation, a solution to a real problem in the town, and for showing wisdom in having a conditional use permit, which obviously is for the purpose, which obviously makes sense for this purpose because it is a very special type of tower, and so that to me is the most important overriding situation here, something we need and something the staff has done a very good job, in my opinion, which obviously is not professional, but still, I just want to thank the town for that, and hopefully the Planning Commission and the Town Council will go ahead and approve this action.
Mr. Christensen,
I'm at 18 Washington Avenue here in Colonial Beach.
there you go, and state your name for the record for me too, Bob. It's Bob Christensen for the record. There we go. It's all right. I got you on there.
My name is Robert Christensen, and I live at 18 Washington Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
Where was that again?
Come on up.
I don't come to these meetings too often, but as you know,
You still have to restate your name and address for the record,
Fred
Joe. I'm
Smith,
sorry. No, your real
Joe
one.
Kelly, 413
Thank
Ward
you.
Street. I look at this opportunity here, and my concern this year is to try to make Colonial Beach affordable for everybody. And I see this, we're taking raw land and potentially making it into an economic entity, a commercial enterprise that will generate real estate taxes, that will provide revenue that doesn't have any impact on schools, the fire department and rescue department, or any other social services. And it's just income coming to the bottom line of the town to help operate. And it's like, this is much of a no-brainer as you can possibly make to help improve the economy of Colonial Beach and provide financing that's sorely needed to help us make Colonial Beach affordable in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. It's still open. Would anybody else like to come up and speak? Okay. All right, with that, I will close the public hearing. I got 6:56 PM. Planning Commission?
Planning Commission closed the public hearing for conditional use permit CUP 2602 at 6:56 PM.
Okay, before we open up for any discussion, I do want to ask, the council is not voting tonight. This is just the public hearing input process to hear from people with the staff presentation and the information available. I also want to clarify that this was requested to be a joint meeting partially because this has been presented to us before as separate processes, and there were so many questions related to the applicant that they ended up joining them all together because it didn't really make sense to talk about one without understanding who the actual applicant was and the information that was relevant to that. So that's why the sequence of this has been put together, is actually to provide more information available to both the public and in the staff presentation. But the actual action will happen in stages and takes time. And also, all of your public officials and your planning commission members and the staff are available for questions and over email. So if there is follow-up by any of the public comments, feel free to reach out, okay? I say that because I just know that this is not typical part for us to jointly do the public hearings together. So there still is time in that process and time for questions. In saying that, council will continue to discuss this item on our subsequent meetings. Will the applicant and the applicant's representatives be available for questions at those times? Okay, so we don't have to feel like we have to jam everything in right now. If things come up, you'll be back. All right, I just want to make sure that was open. All right, with that, I'll open it up for any questions that people have at this time for the town council first. Is that okay? Or you want us to do them all together, everybody? We'll go. Everybody good with that? Good, okay, all right, excellent. All right, so council members, do you have any questions at this time? Yes, Mr. Williams.
Let's see. Just a few things. I will note that it does feel like kind of a little bit of a wonky process to have a CUP before we know the land use is even approved, but I do understand the process. Full disclosure, I have Verizon cell phone. I don't know if anybody else on the commission or the council has cell phone service or perhaps commercial property in any of the zones that might be up for grabs here, but I definitely would recommend if they do that they disclose that.
Do you own stock in Verizon?
No, I do not. Thank you. Just a piece of residential property in town. Let's see, a couple of questions. I did talk to, well, comments and questions. I talked to somebody who installs these towers for a living. They've done it all over the country, including a long stint in New York City. So I had several constituents raise concerns about radiation and stuff like that. So something that this person told me that that's not really an issue because the tower is 150 feet tall, and I don't know what the angle was, 38 degrees or something. He said it would shoot out at about 500 feet before it hit the ground. I don't know if you can confirm that. And so radiation, because 100 feet is the zone where the radiation would be the highest intensity, that it wouldn't cause any kind of concerns with radiation. Is that something you could confirm?
Thank you for the question. And yes, the radiation and the radio frequencies are highly regulated by the FCC, and the FCC has created a set of guidelines and rules through U.S. and international organizations to set these levels. The towers put off radiation that is well below those levels, and you are correct that it should not be a problem, and there has not been any links.
Okay.
And these towers are fully compliant with the FCC regulations.
Okay. And then another question I've gotten from some people is the noise. The person I spoke that installs these said there isn't a noise factor. Is there?
No.
No noise factor?
You should both just stay up there.
Yeah, sure. Sean
Thank
Chai
you.
with Verizon BCI. So we have, on every one of our sites, we have the normal power and then we have a backup generator. The only times that you would hear that noise is when power goes out, the backup generator will kick on. Actually, the battery packs will go on first before the backup generator, but other than that, it doesn't make any noise.
Okay. And just make sure I understand exactly what's happening. The person that I spoke with that installs these says basically it's like two long, like I guess galvanized steel or something, posts basically, one stacked on top of the other. They're about 75 feet each, and if you need to remove them in the future, you install them with a crane, and then you take them down with a crane, and they're pretty easy.
Absolutely. We would pour the concrete foundation first with the anchor bolts. We let that sit for 28 days so they can cure. And on the data rater stacked and monopole, they come in 50-foot sections. So in this case, this is a 150-foot tower, so it'll come in 3 sections. And we're just stacking them one on top of each other.
Okay. And is the foundation like 20 feet deep or?
It
something?
depends on how the geotech is done. They'll design it appropriately to hold 3 future carriers.
Okay.
Normally, it's about 6 or 8 feet deep and about 20 feet wide. And no, let me take that back. 4 by 6 by 20. So,
Okay.
right.
I'm trying to think if there was any other concerns. I think those were the main concerns, other than the site of it. I think from the way that Angela described it, we're going to keep trees around it if we can.
I believe, yes, it will be landscaped, yes, on the outside.
Okay, so people, I guess, will be able to see it when they drive into town, but maybe not, it won't stick out like a sore thumb necessarily?
Right, if you go back to the drawings on the larger print, it shows where the clearing line is, I believe, and that's something that we look at when they apply for their site plan and their land disturbance and all of that, but.
It's about a 1 acre property. The proposed disturbance is about 6,500 square feet. So that's all that could be disturbed based on the plans that are shown.
Okay.
So everything else would be the preserved trees.
And how much
And-
does it cost to remove one of these?
And just, oh, but we were just there. Right there. So if you could see what I'll call the squiggly line on the left plan, that would be the proposed, roughly, approximately, limits of clearing and grading.
Okay. And how much does it cost to remove one of these?
We would never remove one of these, but in the instance that we do, it would probably cost us about 100,000 to remove it. We'll take the whole tower down, and we'll take out the foundation and restore everything back to 18 inches below grade.
So you don't have an estimate, though? Oh, you said 100,000?
About 100,000 to remove one, yes, but
okay.
we would never remove. I've been doing this for 18 years, and I've yet to remove one tower
Oh,
that I
okay.
built, so
The person I spoke with sounded like it was a fairly common thing, so,
I have no idea what he's talking about then.
okay. Okay, I got like some comments, but I'll let other people ask questions before I make my comments.
Quick thing.
Go ahead, Mr. Allison.
Can you bring up the location of, like, the drawing that shows where it could be placed?
It's like in the beginning, I think.
Right there.
Oh, wait.
Nope, that one. Just for everybody's knowledge, my family owns property within this, so just so you know. It's very, very small, will not fit the tower, but it's the very, very thing where the M is, where it says McKinney Boulevard. Allison Floors is there, so just, it will not work there. Just saying, I have family that have close enough vicinity that I want to make sure it's stated.
Is there any place in Colonial Beach where an Allison isn't? So, you know.
We won't go there.
That's a fair point.
I think if I could just add one thing to the Verizon comment, as we talked about, this is a monopole, but it will eventually have 3 different carriers on it. So it's not just Verizon. Verizon's the one that brought this forward and is putting it on there, but it's safe to say there will probably be T-Mobile and.
I have a
somebody
question
else.
about that, exactly, but I'm going to let Mr. Wood go. Go ahead.
Yeah, and fellas, I'm sorry you sat back down. This is your
Yeah,
work
you
out
just
here.
got to stay up here.
Okay. Yeah, plie. But anyway, we've talked a lot about the prenup, okay? But let's talk about why we're going to get into this marriage together. What is the bottom line? What is in it for the folks in Colonial Beach? If you're going to pitch it to us, let's hear the elevator speech.
The increased wireless services, and it will increase the coverage within the town. And then, as one of the gentlemen said earlier, you have a income-generating property, the commercial real estate taxes for something that has very little, if any, tax on the services provided by the town.
So to address some of the concerns that some of our local business owners have now, is that the wireless data is going to be, so we're not going to be in a situation where Town Hill is trying to have events and the card readers they have are plastic bricks. People are actually going to be able to use the Wi-Fi in their businesses and so forth.
100%.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
We're going to bring you Verizon wireless data coverage.
Okay, and since you coexist, I forget the proper phrase, but you share towers with other people.
I'm going to build you a tower that's capable of holding 2 more future carriers when they want to come. We don't care, T-Mobile, AT&T, whoever it is that comes on it, as long as they go below us, that tower's going to hold them. They're going to have fiber on site to be able to connect you. And
so we can finally have our customers at the coffee shop pay for their product.
She will have absolutely great coverage.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Any other questions from council? I got a couple questions. You can just come on and say on up there, yep. He didn't listen the first time. Okay, so you, may or may not know, but the town has a legislative agenda, and one of our legislative agenda items is to increase, internet coverage and competition with what is mostly sole sourced through Breeze Line right now, which is a cable industry. So when you say this is FiOS supported, your Verizon Puck, which right now is a brick, I believe is what Mr. Wood used the term as. It's useless here. Will that now become a competitor to our existing internet services?
They will provide, once this tower is up, they will be providing wireless data packages to all the customers that's available within this radius, within the whole town, yes.
Okay, that would be supported by FiOS level.
Yes, absolutely, yep.
Service.
We will bring our own fiber to this site, and then from there on, we'll provide wireless data packages to any customer that wants it, so.
Okay, my next question is, there was, you talked about co-location. Right now, though, you don't have anybody else interested or signed up for co-locating on this, or when does that phase start?
Unfortunately, I'm Verizon, so we don't.
You're not
I'm here
gonna,
on behalf
yeah,
of
you're not
Verizon,
gonna
so-
go for it, but they come to you. I don't know how that
So
works.
they will go with the company called Towers LLC. So the Vertical Bridge and Verizon have a national built-to-suit agreement where Verizon's the carrier and Vertical Bridge is the tower owner. So they will approach Vertical Bridge and say, hey, I want to co-locate on this tower. And they each, AT&T and T-Mobile already have what we call master lease agreements or site lease agreements that are in place. So it'd be a very simple matter. They just basically pay their rent and go on the tower.
They would likely be there. Okay, that answers one question I have. I guess for full disclosure, I have Verizon. I don't know who in town doesn't have Verizon, because you're crazy if you don't, because you don't have any cell phone service. So, I think that would be, it's pretty much a just no-brainer on that. I do not have any C1 property at all, but I also do not have any property within this zone. And my parents do own a marina, and if nobody knew that about me, then I don't know how I got here. So I think if we want to be full disclosure, I don't know why people think I would or would not want it away from marinas. I just want to make sure there's clarification on any kind of political attacks that were done during that public hearing process. The question of rezoning to A1 is reserved for large parcels of agricultural use. This is a parcel of 1 acre, is my understanding. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, this is just over 1 acre, 1.083 or
barely,
something.
yeah.
Right. And one of the questions I have is, can the chain link fence be black instead of silver?
If you want, we can put privacy slats in the fence. The reason we like to build these 6 or 8 foot chain link fences.
I don't care if it's chain link, I just want it black.
We can do that. We can do
Yeah.
black, we can do green, we can do brown, we can do whatever color you want. So
Every other chain link fence the town builds here in town is black.
100%. We'll go along whatever you say.
The next question I have is if our EMS or how communications would be improved at all by the fact that we would have better Verizon service.
You can also.
And I say this because the fire department and emergency service is sitting right back there.
So one of the things that we cannot do is we can't do any quid pro quo when we allow you on the tower for free, as a condition of approval. Does that make sense? But we will certainly have a reserved spot for your EMS on the tower already.
Okay. And the staff, one of the things that council had asked for is an estimate of what kinds of communication tax revenue comes from these things, and they have not been able to provide that. Is there any sort of estimation for the communication tax?
That's on you guys. Every county taxes us
Well,
when we build a tower.
Right,
we have a
but through
price of
the
a,
state,
we have
yeah.
a tax, but we need to know how much the tax would be applicable to. Does that make
The
sense?
communications tax goes straight to the state, and then they give it to us in one lump sum, so we don't know how much
Yeah,
comes
yeah,
from each
so
tower,
yeah,
do you?
normally whenever you guys tax us on whatever the cost of the property, then we pay it. So
Can somebody get that information to staff to calculate that out for
I
us
can
at a
get you
future
whatever
date?
we've been paying for all,
Sure.
in your neighbor counties. Westmoreland County, we have 6, 7 towers, so, you know.
Great, thank you. That would be a helpful number to have. Okay. Any more questions? Didn't, when I was going on the same route, huh? All right, Planning Commission, you guys have additional
Planning
questions?
commissioners, anybody have additional questions? Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you want your microphone back?
I just have a couple of questions. I thought I had understood this before, but could you explain to us the difference between a wireless data package, internet service that, we may or may not be able to receive, and cell service? So when you say a wireless data service, is that something that is typically only a cell type of service, or how, what are the differences between them?
So if this tower is up, there'll be two things you guys can do immediately. If you have Verizon wireless phone, you're going to have better coverage. You don't have 5G coverage here right now,
Okay,
and
so
that's
we're
the
only talking
absolute
about
truth. You
cell
have horrible
service.
coverage. We know this, because this is a coverage issue for us, not a capacity. We absolutely need this. So everyone that has a Verizon phone, get great coverage on this.
Okay. And then what you just mentioned about the EMS service, that it would have to co-locate, I guess I just didn't know that much about how the EMS service worked, but that is something that we would, or I guess, our emergency services, we would have to pay to co-locate them on the
Yeah,
tower.
so
We wouldn't just get
you will
better
work that
service.
out with Vertical Bridge. They have like a set rate for EMS. It's a discounted rate. Your equipment's not very heavy, so every tower that we build it within 3 carriers and one we call data pack, wireless customers.
Okay, so then we'd only have one other location for co-location for
No,
another?
you still have the 3 majors and your EMS.
Okay,
so,
great,
yeah.
perfect. All right, those are my only 2 questions. Thank you.
There we go. So my personal interest, I not only use Verizon wireless phone, but my home in town happens to have Verizon 5G internet, which is an excellent wireless service. The internet connection gives 300 Mbps download, which is excellent for most, certainly home use. And that's because we happen to have line of sight to a tower in Westmoreland County.
Yeah, yeah.
And most people here in town don't have that, and therefore would benefit from this tower. I think as a planning commission, we had already passed our recommendation on to town council for a 100-foot high tower. And now we're being asked to, these 3 items are asking us to approve 150-foot high, which will increase, I think we saw from your plan, the coverage within our town. I think I was talking earlier, the trees that are currently there, and some of which I'm hoping you will confirm will still remain around the outside of that site, I think I heard we're about 80 feet high.
Yeah, we only want to take out the middle where our compound is.
So
So the
this-
trees will still be there and they'll still grow, unfortunately. And that's why we didn't want to do 100 feet.
Fortunately.
Because in about 2 years, the tower's going to be below the tree line if we kept it 100 feet, so,
Right, so this will project somewhat above the tree line.
yes, sir.
But providing the communication, both for individuals who live here in town and for the businesses that try and operate in town. And so my support, which was there before when we discussed this within the Planning Commission, would also be here today for what you're trying to do. Thank you.
We asked for the 150 in consideration for your future co-locators, so.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, yes, Mr. Williams, because next we'll move to adjourn our portion and they can keep doing their
okay.
thing.
Just a couple of comments as the Planning Commission moves on to deliberate. first off, I'm in favor of the actual tower. I mean, from what I've seen, it seems like it's a good thing for the town. I'm not necessarily a fan of changing a part of a zone. That seems even a little bit weirder than changing allowing it in commercial generically. So I would be most in favor of just changing that one spot. And I know we get lectures from time to time about spot zoning, so I did a little bit of homework and just read real quick the definition of spot zoning in Virginia. Spot zoning occurs when a small parcel of land singled out for a zoning classification differs from that of the surrounding area. According to the Supreme Court of Virginia, notably in Whelm versus Morgan, the legality of the move depends on the purpose. Illegal spot zoning, if the rezoning is done solely to serve the private interest of a specific landowner, example, rezoning a single residential lot to commercial just so the owner can build a shop despite neighbors' objections. Legal rezoning, if the change, though specific to one parcel, is designed to further the general welfare of the community or fits into the locality's comprehensive plan. So I think this is actually probably a very good example of something that we could just spot zone and be fine and not get into having, towers popping up here, there, and everywhere. That's my opinion. So that's what I support. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments, concerns? Okay. The town council at this time will adjourn. It is 7:20 PM. I believe the planning commission take a recess to
Yeah,
reset.
the planning commission is going to take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll re-adjourn here at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
left.
and a rezoning request with conditional use permit, also case 2601, with the applicant, the Colonial Beach Volunteer Fire Department, is requesting approval of these cases, and I'll be glad to walk through this with you. Next slide, please. So this is, again, as I said, there are two cases. You're going to have two public hearings for these cases, and there'll be two separate actions that the Planning Commission will take. I am going to make a presentation to you for these cases together as one staff presentation. We're going to talk about the location and proposed uses, the comprehensive plan guidance, the state code guidance for the substantial accord determination, the zoning ordinance as it relates to the requests, the rezoning with the CUP request details, and also go over staff's recommendations. Next slide, please. This map is from your report. This is map 2 in the report. This shows the subject property here. It's outlined in white and identified. The property is 0.7 acre. It's a vacant grassed area, except if you look at the slide, there's a small area where just to the west of what looks like a parking lot, that parking lot is actually overflow parking that the fire department has been letting Lenny's Restaurant customers use for some time. And then just to the left of that on the screen, yes, thank you, Melissa, that's an area where the fire department has been using the property for some of its equipment storage. The property fronts 200 feet on the west line of Garfield Avenue. It's approximately 50 feet north of Colonial Avenue, as you see here, and Lenny's Restaurant is right at the corner. The existing volunteer fire department is identified also on the screen there at the corner of Colonial Avenue and Douglas Avenue. Properties to the north of the subject property are occupied by single-family residential use. Properties to the west are occupied by single-family residential use or are vacant. And properties to the south are occupied by commercial uses. As we know, Lenny's, one of my favorites. And properties to the east, they are occupied by residential and commercial uses. Next slide, please. This is a zoning map for the town, and it shows the subject property and identified, and the subject property is outlined in the white box. You also see the fire department. The subject property is split zoned. The fire department does own this piece. The southern 100 feet of the property is zoned general commercial C1, and the northern 100 feet of the property is zoned general residential R2. The property is tax map ID 3A2, block 88, parcels 8 through 11. Properties to the north of the subject property are zoned R2. Properties to the west are zoned R2 and C1. Properties to the south are zoned C1, and properties to the east are zoned CR and R2. CR is the commercial residential district. The applicant plans to construct a 60-foot by 120-foot building on the subject property. It would be a public facility as it would serve as an auxiliary building to the existing fire department. The ordinance refers to the CR district. In the CR district, the ordinance would permit, which is what the zoning is proposed, the ordinance would permit the fire station building as an emergency service establishment. And it is currently permitted today, the public facility, by right in an R2 and a C1 district. So as we talk about this, one of the questions may be, well, if the public facility use is permitted in the R1, which is the pink looking color, and the C1 zoning district, why come forward with the rezoning request? And so I think the report outlined for you hopefully clearly, but just wanted to walk everybody through that. You've got a 200-foot wide property and 100 feet of C zoning, 100 feet of R zoning. And with that, the fire department would not be able to build the 60 by 120-foot building across both of those zoning districts without us running into some issues relative to buffers in the ordinance and setbacks, because we walked through the various scenarios with the fire department and their engineer on looking at, well, you know, would it be better just to rezone the whole thing C1? Well, if you do that, the way the ordinance is written today, then from the northern property boundary, there would be a 100-foot buffer requirement. That's in the ordinance. If you rezone the whole property R2, which would allow the fire department building to be built as a public facility, then you begin to hamper the properties that are along Colonial Avenue that are zoned commercial, because then they would not be able to redevelop except for being subject to this greater setbacks and the greater buffer requirement. So in looking at the area and looking at, you know, the fact that really when you start getting into this area of Colonial Avenue, it's not entirely a mix of uses, but there are some areas of mix of uses, right? Because there's some single-family uses along Colonial Avenue. This block is a very short block. So, you know, when you start talking about having commercial zoning and then residential zoning all within that same block, you don't lend yourself enough room to provide appropriate transitions. And so we were looking at it as a mixed-use area, and that's why, you know, the applicant has come forward with the commercial residential zoning. And if you look at the zoning ordinance, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, the CR district's purpose is to provide a mixed-use area. And that's, I wanted you to be able to look at it on the zoning map because I thought that would help to make it clearer. Next slide. This is, there we go. This is looking north on Washington, excuse me, not Washington. This is looking north on Garfield Avenue at Colonial Avenue. And that's Lenny's. Next slide. This is looking back down Garfield Avenue, and you'll see the Lenny's restaurant in the distance, the grass area, which is the fire station property, and then the two residential units, which are at the end of the street. Next slide. This is a little bit further down Garfield, kind of looking into the subject property. You can see Lenny's, but you can also see across this subject property the commercial zoned and residential zoned houses that front on, what is that street? That's not Jackson Street. And this is just down from Franklin. Next slide. This is looking along Franklin, and the house, one of these houses is zoned commercially and one is zoned residentially based on the current zoning map today. Next slide. Whenever you're considering requests for zoning amendments and you're looking at conditional use permits, any land use change that you have in the county, it's important to look at the recommendations of your comprehensive plan. In this case, the subject property is part of the comprehensive plan's central area. The plan refers to the central area as being located between Boundary Street and First Street and is the most diverse planning area encompassing a wide range of land uses. The plan encourages the continued presence of municipal and public offices within the central area, as recognized that these facilities have assisted in keeping a constant stream of individuals in the area to support businesses. The comprehensive plan's future land use map, just like the zoning, because the zoning evidently was adopted to follow the recommendations of the comprehensive plan, but the comprehensive plan future land use map also splits the subject property into the two land use designations, general commercial closer to Colonial Avenue, but instead of it saying residential, it's neighborhood preservation towards Franklin Avenue. The plan provides that the general commercial area is an area located in the town's central area and encompasses parcels along Colonial Avenue and a section of 205 surrounding its intersection with Colonial Avenue. The plan notes that the general commercial area has been limited to these areas to encourage redevelopment of existing commercial areas rather than expanding into other areas. This is outside of the downtown commercial area. The plan further encourages older, blighter portions of Colonial Avenue corridor to be redeveloped and new business pursued. But as I was saying to you earlier, with the split zoning the way it is on these shorter blocks, the redevelopment of those front properties is going to be difficult when it comes to the ordinance standards today for providing separation and transition. The plan, we talked about that, extends 100 feet to the north. The remaining 100 feet that's in the subject property area here is designated for neighborhood preservation. And if you look at the comprehensive plan, this might be something that y'all want to think about, but if you look at the comprehensive plan right now, neighborhood preservation is the future land use designation given to all neighborhoods, right? So and mostly the zoning follows that designation. And so it is interesting that it's, like I said, that it's given to all of the town's existing residential neighborhoods. And, you know, in these short mixed-use blocks, you may want to give a consideration to a different classification that may give some room for an urban design that allows for some mixed properties adjacent to each other, again, with appropriate transition, and the zoning district that you have right now for the commercial residential boundaries may be appropriate. The plan, interestingly, if you see in the map, there's a dark red sort of rectangle, if you will, there, and that is, based on the future land use map, municipal service facilities. And interestingly, the plan only gives the designation for municipal service facilities to town-owned properties that are these public facilities. But the plan, and so it doesn't identify the Colonial Beach Volunteer Fire Department as a municipal service facility or the property that it owns as a municipal service facility. But it does recognize the fire department as a nonprofit community partner that the town is fortunate to have, and it lists the contributions to the public health and safety that the fire department offers. The plan recognizes that one of the principal functions of the local government is to provide water and sewer, trash removal, police and fire protection, parks and recreation, and other types of human services to meet the needs in the community within the town's legal authority and financial capabilities. One of the objectives to meet the goals of providing these services in the plan is that the town, the plan says the town should have a continual analysis of the fire department's needs for facilities and equipment to accommodate increased community's needs as growth in the community occurs. All right, next slide, please. So the 2601, which is the substantial accord determination, I wanted to provide this language for you because the Planning Commission is the authority in state code that makes a determination for substantial accord. And substantial accord, it says in the Virginia Code 2232 that substantial accord determination requires for any public facility, whether that's publicly or privately owned, requires approval of a substantial accord determination to ensure that no public facility is constructed, established, or authorized unless the general or approximate location, character, and extent thereof has been submitted to and approved by the Planning Commission as being substantially in accord with the adopted comprehensive plan or part thereof. And town council, once you make the determination as the Planning Commission, that will be forwarded to town council. And town council has the authority to review the Planning Commission's determination, and they can accept that determination. They can reject that determination. And then they also could remand it back to the Planning Commission for further consideration. But I just wanted to let you know that that's the guidance under state code. Next slide, please. Relative to the rezoning or the zoning and map amendment that the ordinance refers to it as, the zoning ordinance says that in order to approve a rezoning or a zoning map amendment, the town should find that the need for the rezoning is required by public necessity, convenience, general welfare, or is needed because of good planning practices. And then second, that it would be in conformance with the town's adoptive comprehensive plan, and that adequate public facilities would be available or would be provided to serve the proposed development that would occur on the rezoned property. In this case, I think that, the fire department has indicated the public need for the additional public facility space that they have, that it would be in keeping with the general welfare of the overall community. And, the rezoning from C1 and R2 to CR, to me, represents a good planning practice when it comes to looking at that mixed-use area. Next slide. The zoning ordinance also provides some guidance, which I won't read to you, relative to your determinations on conditional uses. Basically, conditional uses are those uses that are permitted within a zoning district, but they're not permitted by right because there's some unique character or characteristic about the use that would potentially have impact on the neighboring properties or the neighborhood overall, and so they should require individual consideration. In this case, the fire station building, where they plan to have the storage and for equipment and storage, that's permitted by right in both the C1 and the R2 district. The community facility use in the C1 and R2 district are both permitted by right as part of the public facility. When we get to the CR district, which they are proposing, that's where the conditional use comes in. Because in a CR district, the fire station is permitted by right, but the community facility, the meeting space and event space that they propose requires the approval of a conditional use permit. Next slide. The zoning ordinance says that conditional uses should be granted provided that the town finds that the use will not have a effect on the health and safety of persons residing or working in the area, that it would not be detrimental to the public welfare interests or incompatible to the property or improvements in the area, and would not be in conflict with the purposes of the town's comprehensive plan. Next slide. So this is the slide that shows the site plan or concept plan, if you will, that the applicants have provided with this request. Again, it is a 60-foot by 120-foot building that they propose. This would be for equipment and fire apparatus storage. They would have some site operations there. If you look at the building, the way the building is laid out, the upper half, if you will, generally, we'll say, half of the building would be for the storage of the fire trucks and other equipment. The bottom half, or generally, of the structure would be for the community facility, meeting space, other of those types of uses that the fire department would have. And so the thought was, with this case, to locate those uses and all the parking area on the southern part of the property, which would be adjacent to the commercial corridor and the commercial zone properties along Colonial Avenue, and so maintain a shorter distance between the northern property line and the adjacent properties to be able to provide the transitional screening there. And so that's what's proposed. There are 30 parking places that are proposed with this request on site. The overflow parking would be provided for an event or something of that nature at the existing fire department's parking lot just across Colonial Avenue, and they have ample parking for that. The applicants will be providing street trees as required by the ordinance. This would reduce the buffer along the northern property to 10 feet, but as I said, there would be 2 staggered rows of evergreen plantings, 15 feet on center, required to be planted along that property boundary as well as the western property boundary. The idea is that those portions of the building are not going to be heavily used, that they would be for the storage, and where they would have events or more activity, that would be in the southern portion of the building, as I explained. Next slide, please. This is a rendering of the building that's planned. This is looking at the property from Garfield. The lean-to that you see would be for storage of equipment, and that would be on the northern side of the property. The 2 overhead doors would lift up where they propose to have the fire vehicle and equipment storage. And then the door on the left side of the building there, where Melissa has pointed out, would be for the entry to the meeting space and the community facility part of the building. We have talked, and there is a condition that's recommended with this, that the applicants would do more than what you see here by adding some architectural elements such as windows, use of different colors, some accent around the main entryway where the awning is now, to help break up the monotonous looking of the building as you see in the elevation right now, and would also help to break up the mass of the building. And so the fire department did not reach out to the company yet to get new renderings, but that is a condition, so that would be required. My understanding is they plan to have windows in that panel that's between the overhead doors and the person door to the left, and then also on the other side of the awning. And we talked about maybe having some different treatment at the entranceway. So we're going to be working with them through that if this goes forward at the time of site plan. Also, just to mention that, right now the fire department owns 4 properties, and prior to them, or in conjunction with them bringing in a site plan, of course they have to meet all the other requirements of the ordinance and codes, but they will also be required to have a consolidation plat where they take those 4 lots and consolidate them into one parcel. And so as they go forward, it would be the one parcel. Next slide, please. The conditions of the conditional use permit are recommended in this case. They include requiring compliance with the conceptual site layout, that we talked a little bit about the architecture and building materials, the site landscaping we talked about in the visual screen. They would be limiting the hours of operation. I think it's 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. And they also are not allowing any outside activities past normal operating hours. We set in the condition, I believe it is 7 p.m., so there would not be any outside activities. No one is allowed to have outside activities like a birthday party that's outside, right? Any of those events like that would have to occur inside the building. But if there were going to be any outside activities associated with that inside birthday party, that they would have to cease by 7 o'clock. Lighting would be limited, and the condition really copies what's in your ordinance now, which doesn't allow spillover over a certain amount onto adjacent properties, as well as requiring upward reflection of the lighting and concealed light sources. And then there also is a screening requirement for any mechanical equipment and refuge. The other thing I wanted to point out about the approval and the conditions was that in condition 4, as it relates to the hours of operation, that all events shall be conducted so as not to be a nuisance to adjacent properties, including ensuring that any music associated with any event cannot exceed 75 decibels when it is measured at the property line. Now, that follows the town's noise ordinance, so they would be subject to that. They are going to require, according to the chief, deposits from all of their people who may have an event there, and they will be held accountable for following the rules that the department establishes, which would have to be in compliance with these conditions. Next slide. Staff recommends approval of the substantial accord determination, 2601. While not a municipal service facility, and the future land use map has a split recommendation, the plan still recognizes the volunteer fire department as a community facility, and it is described in the plan. When the plan speaks about the municipal facilities, it's included in there. The proposed zoning, to me, complies with the plan, but really, when talking about the public facility, the plan recognizes that the fire department is an important community facility. The fire department does own the property, and this really, a designation as a municipal service facility would be appropriate, even though now it has the commercial and residential. It is in close proximity to the existing fire station, so from a location standpoint, serving as an auxiliary building would be appropriate. It would continue to support municipal and office facilities in the central area as the plan recommends. And so staff finds that it satisfies the location, character, and extent as specified in the Code of Virginia. Relative to the rezoning to CR with a conditional use permit to allow the community facilities, staff also recommends approval. Staff finds that the narrowness of the land use designations of the plan and the zoning district boundaries are basically impractical in this short block and in given this, really more of an urban setting that you have in town, and that it's really more practical to approve the zoning to CR, which again speaks to the a mixed use in that block. The CR zoning says that its purpose is to provide for a transitional mix of uses. The proposal accommodates a public facility use and a needed fire department auxiliary building. And as conditioned, the community facility use would not adversely affect the surrounding properties and the surrounding area. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have. Because I said a lot.
I do have one question on item 3, the no outside activities.
Yes.
Once a year, we have the Fireman's Parade. It doesn't start until 7:30. That's an outside activity.
That's where you guys get ready for the parade, but that wouldn't be an actual, what happens when you get back?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have to tell all the tales, but just, so y'all basically have an event there afterwards,
Yeah.
and it usually is outside.
Yeah, it would be just once a year. So do we need to amend that to say once a year for the Fireman's Parade? It would be
Yes, sir.
authorized?
That could absolutely be amended to say, except for related to the fireman's parade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
wanna
you
make-
guys don't have any other activities outside?
Well, so my thoughts on that is that there's also community outreach. What I would like to do is broaden that language a little bit, but specifically target it at Colonial Beach Volunteer Fire Department is allowed to have outside activities up till a certain time, but the private would not.
So if they were, yeah, and that would be
So
fine.
if it's for the volunteer fire department, they can be outside until reasonable, non-interference with neighbors.
Right, so
kind of
what would you
hours.
suggest, 11, like the other events have to end, or 10, or whatever?
Whatever's harmonious with the rest of the noise ordinances for the town. We don't want to make this separate or arbitrary. I just want it to be compatible with those, the other ordinances for the town, as far as disturbance.
And in looking at the ordinance, I believe that's 11.
Yeah.
But I will.
That's my understanding of it. I just don't have
Yeah,
the.
I'll
section
double
on
check that, but we can certainly modify that condition to say, except for
Official
fire department,
Colonial Beach
official
Fire
fire department functions.
Activities and
Activities, functions, okay.
So that was my only, I don't know if anybody else has thoughts on that one. I just wanted to to cast that one out there. Because, yeah, somebody having a party out till late night on the lawn is different than community outreach and things that you guys do to outside, because that's the best venue for that. Okay. Do we have any other questions, thoughts, discussion? Just briefly, but we'll get into like deep stuff and just some initial gee whiz stuff before we go ahead and open the public hearing. Mr. Long? Yeah,
Maybe half a dozen things, but maybe it's best to do it after the public hearing.
perfect.
Is that what you're-
Yep.
Okay.
Do we have anybody signed up to speak or ask questions or? Okay, absolutely.
Good evening. My name is David Roby. I'm the fire chief, Colonial Beach Volunteer Fire Department. As Darla said, we're trying to put a building up on this piece of property we've had for years. It used to be used for our training. We still use it as training area. But the building we're putting up is 60 by 120, as Darla said. About roughly 50 foot by 60 foot of it will be an engine bay to store a reserve engine that we have in the building right now. The building we're in right now, we've outgrown it. The apparatus these days are a whole lot bigger than what they were 30, 40 years ago. And we just don't have the room. We don't have room for storage, regular equipment storage, or apparatus storage. So that's the main purpose of the bay, the two bays, that and to maintenance on the vehicles. Right now, the apparatus we have now, they're called tilt cabs, where the cab tilts forward to work on the apparatus. We can't do that in the building that we have now. We don't have enough height. With this building, we can work on the apparatus in the building. If it's something that's carried over 2 days on working on it, it can be left in the building with the cab up to where the maintenance could be done on it. That is a big plus for us, that we don't have to have it sitting outside or send it to another facility to be worked on. They can come here and work on it in our building. The other half of the building would be like a hall that we could rent out. We're doing that because the fundraisers these days, they're tough. Not to mention the cost of day-to-day operations. We're trying to supplement the cost of day-to-day operations, renting out a hall to the public. You know, we appreciate the money that the town gives us to operate in the county. We get allotment from the town in the county. But with that said, with the cost of apparatus these days, just regular equipment, it's getting harder and harder to meet them goals that we have. That's why we still have to do fundraisers. We've been continuing to doing fundraisers for years. But like I said, it's getting tougher and tougher to get the help to do the fundraisers and also the support for the people to come to our events. With this renting out this building, that would be a big fundraiser for the fire department for an income to come into it, supplement the money that we get from the town and the county. So that's our main goal, why we're trying to doing this building. As she stated, with the front of the building, we're going to dress it up. You know, the current building was built in 1960. The original firehouse was the old police department down here on North Urban Avenue. We've been there since 1960. We make sure the grass is cut and it's landscaped in the building we're in now. We're going to do the same with this building. We're going to make it look like something. We support our neighbors. We're not going to be having, you know, events, after 11 o'clock going on out there where there's noise. Like I said, we support our neighbors. They support us. So that's our goal. I hope it does get approved because we've really outgrown the building that we're in right now. We have two apparatus sitting behind each other that is about a foot between the two apparatus to get around in the building. Like I said, years ago, when that building was built in 1960, the apparatus was a whole lot smaller than what it is today. The reserve piece that we have, we need to keep that as a reserve piece because the newer engines, there's so much computer-operated equipment on it. They're not mechanical anymore. They're all electronic. And with that said, there's problems with that. They're breaking down. They're not like the older trucks where we don't have any problems with them. You know, they don't last forever, but they last longer than the newer ones do. If we can get that reserve engine in another building, that would free up the building that we're in, because we're not going to run emergency response out of this new building. Our goal is to continue running at the firehouse that is existing today. This is just for storage and for storage for a reserve apparatus and maintenance on the bay side, and then on the hall side is to rent out to supplement the income. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Nope. Okay. All right. Fantastic. Thank you very much. We're going to have the public hearing real quick, and then if we have any other questions, we'll holler at you. But thank you guys for all of your service. I couldn't have Colonial Beach without the volunteer fire department and the services you guys provide for the community. We, greatly appreciate that.
Thank you. It gets tougher and tougher each year because the call load is going up. They're building houses in town, mutual aid calls. The call load is going up every day, but I do appreciate it.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing for, we'll have to do two separate open and close, but for the substantial accord determination, SA 2601 at 8:15. I've only got one. Say again? There is no speakers. All right, so then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing for the substantial accord determination 2601 at 8:15. We'll go ahead and open the rezoning with conditional use permit RZ-C 2601 at 8:16. We do have one sign up for that, and that's Will Knuckles, and I don't believe he's currently in the audience anymore. Do we have any other members of the gallery wishing to come forth and say anything? Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and close rezoning with conditional use permit RZ-C 2601 at 8:16. So any further discussion, Mr. Long?
Yeah,
all this impervious cover. I'm assuming that what I'm seeing on the exhibit, the attachment B, that will all be impervious cover, and I just wanted to ask whether that's necessary, whether there's anything we can do, whether there's anything we could be concerned about creating so much impervious cover in this area, whether there's anything we should do about it, or whether part of it does not need to be, black asphalt, or what are you doing? And my final question is about the sidewalk. I read in the report that Public Works has said the sidewalk is appropriate and doesn't need work done on it. But when I've seen it, and when I look at the picture that you presented, Darla, which was probably about the third picture in your presentation, it looked pretty overgrown and not very suitable sidewalk. I was just surprised. That's it. When you look down there, I was surprised. It looks more like a trough than a sidewalk in the way we want to do it, or whether we could do something, or whether anything needs to be done. Maybe it's a start comment needed on that. If I'm reading the picture wrongly, then I'll accept that. But impervious cover, the lean-to, and the sidewalk were the areas I really had questions about.
The lean-to part is just for the trailers that we have, basically, that we can get them out the weather. That's what that lean-to part is, to store those trailers in underneath a roof, basically. Not where it's taking up the space inside the bays for the apparatus. That's what the lean-to was for.
Okay. Have we had any concerns from the local residents? Are they aware of this?
They have received letters from the town announcing that this was happening. That happened 15 days ago, yeah. So we haven't heard anything from any of the adjacent neighbors. And I guess what I'm understanding of the fire chief to say it's for the boat trailer and the other trailer that you have on site now?
We have a couple of trailers. We have an enclosed trailer for hazmat equipment. We have just a regular, like, utility trailer. And those will be stored underneath that lean-to part. That's what the goal was, to get them out of the sun, because the sun is just heating them up.
The conditions would require evergreen plantings along that side.
Yeah, we're going to screen that side on the residential side along Franklin Street, that street, and then other Jackson on the back side of the building. There'll be landscaping there to block, to block the view also. And like I said, we're going to dress the front of it up. Bottom line, it all comes down to money. We're struggling now. We're going to do everything we can. The windows are not shown in the drawing that Darla had put up. There's like 5 windows that go across. They're to be determined at build time, according to that we have allotment in there for X amount of windows, and we can place them wherever we want. They'll be going across the front to dress it up, and then the two-tone on the siding, something to break it up. And then of course, we're going to have a sign on it somewhere also to break up the color. That was just a color he threw in there. That's not confirmed yet 100%. My thing with that darker color, it fades, so what's it going to look like in a couple of years? So it might be better to use a lighter color for the siding. That's, we're going to dress it up as much as we can to make it look like something.
Just the impervious surface. If that area is not being used for parking, is there
Anything else we can do? I'm talking about the area towards Franklin Avenue.
That's all going to be grass.
Say that again?
It'll be grass.
Oh, well, then that removes that.
Yeah, you're talking about the long side of the building where the lean-to is, and then the back side of the building, all that will be grass.
I was talking about where on the drawing in front of us, lot 8A is written, is that all
That-
going to be black?
Well, not at, eventually, yes, we were hoping to blacktop it eventually, but right now it's going to be gravel because that's where the bay is, where the apparatus will be coming out, where we can back into the building. So yes, that will be gravel, all that will be gravel right now. Hopefully down the road, when we get some of our money back from renting it out, we can blacktop it or concrete that one part there and then blacktop the parking lot area.
Maybe other
Yeah. no,
commissioners have comments.
Mr. Chairman, if I might. So the way you see it here, even if it is gravel, that would still be what's referred to as impervious based on the ordinance. So the zoning ordinance permits you to exceed 36% impervious cover, which this would, obviously, provided that you mitigate that impact of over, so you have to treat basically the stormwater over that 36% to control it so it leaves the site basically as the same, at the same rate as it would pre and post development, right? So the engineers are going to have to come up with a plan that will either likely involve underground storage or detention of the stormwater before it leaves the site. We can certainly work with them through, the plan and as it's developed to look at other areas and maybe even encourage around the front of the building and, some additional landscaping areas that would reduce that impervious cover. We can do that without it being a condition. I think the fire department I guess you guys are going to do some landscape beds out there anyway. That's not shown on here. The areas of the street trees that are required, they're not shown on here either. So there are going to be some other green spaces that aren't shown on here. This was just a conceptual plan. The other thing relative to the sidewalks, Public Works did inspect the sidewalks in front of this. Now, the picture that I showed you, I don't know what the date of it was, coming back from Franklin, looking back down Garfield, because I got it off of Google Earth. So I don't know if that's the state of it today exactly, because I didn't take it today or within the last couple of weeks, but Public Works has said that the width of the sidewalk and the condition of the sidewalk along Garfield is acceptable. Now, they are going to put in generally about where you see this grassed area, that's where their commercial entrances are going to be. The commercial entrance is going to be for the fire department storage areas. So you see that curb cut there. So that will be a curb cut that's going to have to be asphalt or concrete. Then, when you come down further down Garfield, you have two other entrances that they're proposing, and so they will also have to be have a surface that's allowed for the sidewalk to go across there. And what Public Works has said is the existing sidewalk meets the minimum standards. While they're doing construction, if they break up or damage any of the sidewalk, then they would have to replace it. And they're aware of that. That's a condition.
Okay.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a digression from the matters at hand, but.
Well, except we should, if we felt that it wasn't, that the sidewalk did need to be treated in some way, it could be part of the conditional use permit, I would suggest, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, yeah, that could be. There will be some additional work there with the curb cuts that are required, as well as the stormwater management plan, because they're going to have to control the water coming out of there. So I think that there will definitely be some revisions to what that existing condition is. And that will all be subject to other standards, construction standards that are beyond our purview. But as far as generally wanting egress and sidewalks and planning for sidewalks and that, absolutely. And I wouldn't think that the fire department wants us to be anything less than accessible. So I'm pretty confident you guys will take care of whatever you need to take care of.
I don't need to continue that discussion. I am in favor of the fire department doing this. It's not that I'm saying that this is not something we shouldn't approve in the planning commission. I just want to make it as valuable as we can for the town when we do it. So that I don't need to add
Okay.
anything else.
But I only had one question. What is the height of the building? I haven't seen that, or,
Approximately, I think it was 25 feet.
okay.
know,
It
there's
just
ba-
wasn't noted. These are flat plans for the space. But,
it's
um,
roughly 25 feet,
okay.
because those bay doors, they're 14-foot tall.
Yep, that's what I figured. They were 14 foot. So 25 at the apex, or whatever the roof height is.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a little bit of a pitch on it.
yeah. And then, yeah,
One thing, I just,
Sure.
I know you don't want to belabor the sidewalks, but I will say, you know, the city is, or the town is under a lot of scrutiny right now with the FHWA for their sidewalks, so I am going to trust that they have thought about this. And if this was a private developer, I would say absolutely make it part of a conditional use permit, like if they're already going to be in there. But this is the fire department, they're already financially struggling, like, I don't want to add additional burdens onto, I wouldn't want to add additional burdens to not make this happen. And I have faith that the town is gonna upgrade the sidewalks as well as they can with the budgetary constraints.
and the only other thing that I had on my list was traffic impact, but you kind of addressed that with, you're not running first response. This is only for storage and maintenance. And then the only other traffic impacts would be when events are held and it's co-located or at least very close to Colonial Avenue. So we try to minimize the amount of traffic there. And we'll have restrictions on hours of use, so people aren't going to be running in and out
when
of
we
there
get,
late.
you know, we haven't really got that far yet.
Yeah.
We've talked about it, but there'll be a contract, you know, that people will have to sign. There'll be a deposit they'll have to, you know, put towards it. You know, there'll be rules that go along with, we're just not going to open the door and say, hey, do whatever you want. That's
Oh,
not the
absolutely
case.
not, no.
you know.
No, that's fantastic. Any other thoughts, questions? Okay. Then we need to go ahead and get some motions going unless we've got any other staff input. So the only amendment to the staff recommendation that I've heard so far is what I said, and Mr. Malone started the conversation about exclusively for the fire department. Yeah. And that would be under the rezoning and conditional use permit. But as far as the substantial accord determination and the definition that you put forth, there wasn't any modifications that we had discussed. So I need some kind of either recommendation to move the substantial accord determination forward, a motion of some sort.
I move that we approve the substantial accord determination 2601.
That's seconded.
Okay, and we get a second? All right, then we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Mr. Long? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and let Mr. Malone go ahead and get his 2 cents in real
Yes.
quick before we
So
do the
I
roll
will
call.
be abstaining from all voting for anything with the fire department since I am a member of the fire department.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just as a note, we still do have a quorum with 5 members present. that will be voting on this, so we can go ahead and proceed with that. So we're going to note Mr. Malone's abstention. And then I'm going to go ahead to Ms. Adams. Mr. Hutchins?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Ms. Barstow? Chair votes aye, so we'll go ahead and make the formal recommendation to move forward the staff recommendations for the substantial accord determination, SA 2601, at this time. And then next, the rezoning with conditional use permit, RZC 2601, with the amendment of outside activities allowed for official Colonial Beach Fire, Volunteer Fire Department activities and functions. We need to go ahead and see if we can get a motion for that.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All right, then we'll do a roll call vote. I'll start at the left hand. Mr. Long?
Aye.
Ms. Hutchins?
Aye.
Yes. And chair votes aye, so we'll go ahead and put forth a rezoning with conditional use permit RZ-C 2601 with the amendments as noted, unanimously approved to be moved forward to council with the staff recommendations. The next item on the agenda is ZTA 2603, addition of definition for small-scale production.
I'm going to promise our friends from Richmond, is it Richmond you came from, that this would be short and we'll move on to the discussion. This is a small-scale production zoning text amendment that you saw last month briefly. Next slide. The original request, as you know, was a potential coffee roasting business that's inquired about zoning for such a business. They anticipate selling via the internet directly to customers and eventually to wholesale customers. Our zoning ordinance does not address coffee roasting or small-scale production. The town does not have light industrial zoning like other localities do. Next. I did change something on here, so maybe it wasn't on this one. It's the next one. Anyway, the amendment, the first zoning text amendment 2603 is simply the definition, and it is in your packet and before you. Next slide. And then the parts that are underlined, I needed to correct something that's in your packet. So this is really an amendment to section 7-3 Resort Commercial RC District Conditional Use Permit. Section 8.2, because we had talked last month that you wanted to see all three of the districts with a conditional use permit. So we've changed that to be section 8.2, General Commercial C1 District with a conditional use permit required, and then section 9-3, Commercial Residential CR District Commercial Use, conditional use permit required to allow for small-scale production not exceeding 6,000 square feet. Next. So staff recommends approval to the town council to amend section 20-2 definitions and separately separate public hearing and action to recommend approval to amend 7.3 resort commercial. As I read, only that, would be the section 8.2. Next. That's it for that zoning text. You want to go back, I'm sorry, to the recommendation slide. Do you have any questions? I know we talked about it last month. I think we have one person here to speak. Oh, no, we have two. Because this is only a zoning text amendment, the person who's looking at the coffee roastery is not here. We're working through the zoning text amendment that includes all of these, and then he will come back. This will require a conditional use permit, and once it goes through council, then he'll come back with a conditional use permit application.
Okay, just for administrative purposes, I have to open and close each one of the ZTA sections separately, but we're kind of considering this all together because it's related, as we've kind of been doing this evening. So opening the public hearing for ZTA 2603 at...
That's the definition, right?
That's the definition, yeah. Amended section 20-2 definition for small-scale production at 840. We have one person signed up for public comment, Mr. Eric Nelson. We're going back to 3 minutes because it's
Okay.
planning commission.
Good evening.
You've signed up for both, so if you want to get it in 3 minutes, or if you need more time, you can come back up.
Okay. Good evening, Eric Nelson, 1321 Lossing Avenue. I am actually speaking on behalf of the roaster, the business who is trying to open the roastery in the downtown area. And I think this is a very legitimate use for in that zone. It is consistent with the kind of use that a brewery has. So it is, I think, a natural step to allow for a roastery to be in the same kind of conditions. It also adds to the vitality, the economic vitality of the business district. And I'm sort of putting on my hat as the president of Downtown Colonial Beach that supports the economic development of the town. And I think having these kinds of businesses like roasteries and breweries are really quite attractive things to attract visitors to town. So for all those reasons, I support this change in the text amendment and the conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else that wants to come forward and speak? All right, then I'll go ahead and close the public comment for zoning text amendment 2603 at 8:42 p.m. Do we have any other further discussion? Do we have any motions? Can you get a second? Okay. I'll take a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Malone. Aye. Ms. Adams? Mr. Hutchins? Aye. Mr. Long? Aye. Ms. Barstow? Aye. And chair votes aye. So we'll go ahead and recommend to Planning Commission, or the Town Council, to the Planning Commission recommendation for the definition addition to 20-2 for small-scale production. And then we'll go ahead and open the public hearing for zoning text amendment ZTA 2604 to amend resort commercial district uses CUP required for, let's see here, C1 and CR, all with conditional use permits.
And RC as well. all three
And
districts.
RC. C1, CR, RC, yes, all the commercial districts, to allow ordinance for small-scale production not exceeding 6,000 square feet. I'll open that at 8:43. Mr. Nelson, do you have anything further to add to the matter?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that I appreciate the fact that you're including it in all of the categories where it could possibly take place. I think that's really advantageous for the person who's actually trying to open up this business, because as their real estate agent, we haven't really figured out exactly where they're going to be. So having the option of having it possibly in any of the three areas, I think is very helpful. And also for other people who want to open similar businesses, I appreciate the fact that you're considering all of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, anybody else wish to speak on the matter? All right, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing for zoning text amendment ZTA 2604 at 8:44 p.m. Any other discussion? Can I get a motion? Can I get a second? All right, Ms. Adams got a second. We'll do a roll call vote. I think we're on this side. Aye. Ms. Barstow, aye. Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hutchins? Aye. Ms. Adams? Mr. Malone? The chair votes aye. So, Planning Commission votes to move forward the staff recommendation for the zoning text amendment ZTA 2604 to amend all of the commercial district uses for small-scale production not exceeding 6,000 square feet. Okay. Next up is Planning Commission action, circling back around to communications facility from our earlier joint meeting for zoning text amendment 2601 to amend 8-2 of the Town of Colonial Beach zoning text amendment to list communications facility as a permitted with the approval of a conditional use permit within the general commercial C1 zoning district. Do we have any other conversation regarding that?
I guess I have a question.
Yeah.
It was brought up earlier in our meeting about spot zoning, and I wonder why that hasn't been brought up as a possibility before.
Ms. Lawrence had mentioned the incompatibility with zoning it as an agricultural use, which is what we would just have in the current current ordinances. I can let her expand on that. Ms. Lawrence?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Hutchins was inquiring about the spot zoning, and my response was along the lines of we'd discussed that agricultural or rezoning the property as A1 didn't fit with the character of that zoning type. And there was also another state ordinance that was prohibitive in that respect for spot zoning as an option.
We are talking about having it in C1 and the question that came up about spot zoning. It is surrounded by commercial on every side that's located in the town. We don't have any other properties that are agricultural in the town. While it is across the street from agricultural, I'd recommend the C1. The other issue is that you'd still have to do a cup even if it was zoned A1, because there's nothing in our code right now that allows a 150-foot tower in the A1 as well.
Okay.
Isn't there also, there's prohibitions against spot zoning? So you need to be really careful if you do it, that you're
Yes.
not going against the Code of Virginia.
Right, there's nowhere else that we're going to put an A1 in that area, and it's a small lot, as the mayor said. Do you want to add something to that?
I would just say that, I've had this topic come up many times too. And, if you were rezoning something that may not have the same zoning around it, but the comprehensive plan called for that, then you could say, well, we're not doing spot zoning because we're complying with the plan and we're forwarding what the plan is looking for. In this case, the plan doesn't support the agricultural zoning there. The surrounding properties are zoned commercially, and I think you'd have a hard time not only justifying the argument that people refer to as spot zoning, but also taking a commercial property like that and doing what the term people use as down zoning. So there's two things that, are both looked upon as being not appropriate. I think staff has taken the right stance on this with their amendments.
The current land use in the plan has it as a treed lot, but the future land use has it as commercial with the surrounding property. So it is congruent with the comp plan, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
So we talked about co-locating earlier. I was just wondering if we know that this cell tower is going to be co-locating, why can't the language reflect that, the co-locating as a requirement, not just a where practical type language?
So we know that, right now, we only know that Verizon's going to be on that tower. If the emergency services wants to go on there, they'll have one. But we don't know that others will. We're asking that if somebody comes into town, we'll actually ask them to co-locate on one of the existing towers.
Yeah, I guess just because we're talking about the language, I just want to make sure we're,
So clarity on the language about co-location, as in co-location of services on existing towers, not necessarily co-location of clustering towers together. I guess that was my take on some clarity with that.
Is that what you're talking about when somebody new comes into town, or they're co-locating on a pole?
co-locating on the same tower.
Yes, to both.
Yes.
Because,
So if another company came in and said they need more coverage, they want to build a tower, we would say, we've got towers in the same area, because they're really not gonna, we haven't defined another area that it would make sense to allow a second tower at this point. Do you want to answer that a little bit better?
And one of the things with these towers, the propagation goes about 2 to 3 miles. So a company will not come in and actually put another tower within 2 to 3 miles. So you will not have another tower. And as far as co-location, the applicant here is the towers, which is that joint venture between Vertical Bridge and Verizon Wireless. We can't commit to, Verizon Wireless is only going to have one antenna array on this tower. We can't commit on behalf of other companies to co-locate, but given the market demands for increased data services, they're going to come.
no, absolutely. I'm just for clarity of language and understanding purpose, it was quasi addressing some of the commentary previously about driving into town and seeing
Yeah.
what appears to be a porcupine of cell towers on your greeting into Colonial Beach, so.
I would like you guys to kind of go through the points that we made where there's been a request to change some of the language, such as B3, if we could change 3.5 to up to 5 feet, not to exceed 5 feet.
Oh, yes, all right.
It's on page 7, I'm sorry, of the packet.
Yeah, so that was noted, the 5 foot, and then you had another note.
We had a couple of.
For J, I have J2.
Well, actually, D2, either strike that last sentence that says as part of the site plan, or, because it's controlled by FAA. Or if you want to keep that in, we would put comma to the extent permitted by applicable law. Because we're not, you want to, what's that?
Can I just clarify?
Sure, sorry.
And on the lighting, the FAA only requires lighting for towers that are greater than 200 feet. So lighting's not going to be something that is on this tower.
Right.
Yeah, again, remember, these are text amendments for anybody that comes in. Of course, we're not allowing anything over 150 feet, so we could have probably left the whole lighting thing out. The other, oh, sorry, did you want discussion on that or questions?
We talk about, we're talking lighting on ground level too, or just light for the tower?
Lighting for the tower. We have lighting standards in town in terms of the down lighting.
Yeah, okay, it's in addition to 8-3. So you said we could have omitted that? Are we striking D, or are we just trying to remove that last sentence on D2?
Mr. Chairman, I thought one of the suggestions was just to add to the extent permitted by law.
Okay, that was the other one there, okay.
I think that will be my small preference, but I don't feel strongly about it.
I thought you were saying I could take that.
All right, so everybody's on the same page. D2, last sentence, as part of site plan approval, what is the staff recommendation?
To add a comma at the end that says, to the extent permitted by applicable law. I think is
Okay.
what I heard people being most comfortable
Okay, so that supplements, that doesn't strike anything.
Right.
That's a,
Leave that in
replacing
there.
the period with a comma and to the extent, okay.
And then J2, changing 5 miles to 2 miles
Okay, so,
and adding to the extent permitted by applicable law, as there's a state code reference, but J2, changing the 5 miles to 2 miles. We're a smaller town than some of the towns where I borrowed some of this text from, and there's really no reason to go beyond that.
okay, and where,
And at the end of the paragraph, comma, to the extent permitted by applicable law. Things change a lot in the telecommunication industry.
so J2 is going to read
J2.
an inventory of the applicant's existing sites that are located within the town or within 2 miles.
2 miles of the town's
Of the
border.
town's border, including specific information about the location, height, and design of each tower.
To the
as a-
extent,
To the extent, okay.
some of that is proprietary information and protected under state code.
Allowed, okay, to the extent allowed by applicable law. Okay, so those three
That's in the
amendments.
conditions.
I also have a note,
Yeah.
6, 7, under J19 to remove.
We had J7 did we do that one yet?
Was it J7 or J19?
J7,
Documentation that demonstrates the need for the telecommunications tower or related facility to provide service primarily within town.
yeah, it turns out Virginia Code Section 15.2-2316-4-2 says that a locality shall not disapprove an application on the basis of the applicant's business decision or specific need for the project.
So are we striking 7?
I would strike 7 and we'll renumber.
Okay, strike 7 and renumber. All right, so
And strike 19, same.
and strike 19 for the same. Okay.
And then there's been a suggestion back on security.
And security is,
It's in the conditional use permit that you'll see, but there's been G, I'm sorry, page 9G, to go ahead and
black, paint black.
add a point that they do not have to conform to the signs, fencing regulations, as, how would you word that? Because we're gonna, like, you're gonna see in the cup, one of the conditions is that they could allow for security reasons to have a different fence than we normally allow in town. So we could work on a sentence to allow them to. If fencing is used. Yeah. Right, 6 foot plus 3 rows of barbed wire or the safety fence.
Mr. Chairman, do we need to take into account the mayor's proposal that it's black? Remember that?
I think that belongs in the conditional use. So what we're trying to suss out right now is just the zoning text amendment 260.
Right.
Well, we were
I
doing
think the
2601
recommendation
and
is so
we
that we're
spilled
not-
over in 2602.
So that our cup is not going against the ordinance to go ahead and put in that security fencing outside of the town I'll have to think of wording. G3, yeah.
Okay, so add 3.
Security fencing is permitted to be maximum height of 6 feet plus 3 rows of barbed wire. That's all there, I mean, I don't know what else would come up. That's what I've normally seen is the, what you call it.
That's typical language that you've seen in other jurisdictions.
I can do a little bit more research and clean it up before it goes to council if you prefer, but
I think for security fencing is limited to 6 foot plus 3 course barbed wires. Okay. Security fencing is limited
Melissa, did you get that for the notes, or
to
was it
6
spoken into the
foot
mic? Okay.
with 3 course barbed wire.
Or other, it doesn't have to be 3
On
rows of
top.
barbed wire, other security features. To preclude trespassing and vandalism. And/or
That's why I was trying to be a little bit more specific, because we've already got one of those in town on the way in. All right, so security fencing is limited to 6 foot with additional security measures is required. All right, additional security measures is required. Thoughts, Ms. Adams? No? Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on that one? You have anything else you need to add?
All right, so let's see, where is page?
So that recommendation is, can you go to the next recommendation?
So
Next
just
slide.
to clarify, for ZTA 2601,
Oh, are
we
still
don't
on
have
that?
anything to clean up. All of the amendments we just discussed are part of ZTA 2602.
Oh, I thought you already took action on 2601, sorry.
Yeah, okay. I'm just
Okay.
trying to stay organized here. Yeah. No, we did not take a roll
So
call
they
vote.
didn't- They didn't take any action on that,
No.
sorry. I am just trying to get you all out of here.
I hear you. I'm just trying to
Sorry.
keep all the ducks in a row. So there were no changes to ZTA 2601. We just discussed the changes to
So
2602.
Go back again, Melissa. Yeah, so we need probably separate action on those, so, no, go to A.
Yeah, that's why I was,
Yeah,
because
sorry.
2601 was clean and 2602 was heavily amended.
Mm-hmm.
And they were separate public hearings.
Mm-hmm.
So just for administrative. All right, then. And then, so is everybody satisfied with that? So we'll just go ahead and plow through and make sure that the CUP language is good, and then we'll go ahead and go through and make recommendations for each one of these individually. Yeah, since we're doing the minutes. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. We'll just go ahead and clean everything up, just stay on task type.
Melissa, can you pull up the substantial accord presentation then? You want me to do the presentation for this substantial accord? I'm not doing much because you heard it all from Ms. Odom on the other, and why we're doing substantial accord, but we're recommending that you permit the telecommunication tower and related communication facility equipment, and that is in accord with, can you go down another one? I mean, I have a presentation if you want to hear it, but it's in your report, but we recommend that you determine that it's in substantial accord with the town's comprehensive plan as required by 15.2-2232, and there's the reasons why they're all in your report. Next slide. That one's in your report as well, unless you have any questions. We believe the proposal satisfies the criteria of location, character, and extent as specified in the Code of Virginia. Next. And the recommendation would be to approve the substantial accord, and you've heard from Ms. Odom why we're doing that, and just, and so we didn't have to do a public hearing, and there's some question whether or not we have to do it for telecommunication facilities, because everybody's, but we're going to do it to make sure we've got it done, so.
So we are going to do,
We're going to vote on it tonight. We don't need a public hearing for this
okay,
one.
just making sure that's clear.
Uh-huh.
Do we have any other discussion or clarification about substantial accord for this telecommunications facility? Because we also talked about availability of emergency services and telecom for that as well. Okay, so there's no amendments to that. That's what it is. And then the last is any changes, amendments, or discussion about the conditional use
go down to
permit
D.
as presented with the staff recommendations?
Mr. Chairman, I just have
Yep.
one question about that, and I may have confused it. There was a discussion that was brought up by the town council as well about whether there should be a bond to cover this, as discussed, this $100,000 removal cost. Whether that should be in the conditional use permit or whether we feel that that's not a necessary requirement. Given that we heard that there weren't, the expert hadn't seen this happen in 18 years.
I've done them for solar farms, but they're much bigger and have a life expectancy of 40 years. And for wind farms, like somebody else mentioned, I've not seen it done for telecommunication towers. This land is leased from one party to another and that's building it, but I'll let the attorney add anything else he.
Well, just the logistics of it, we would have to go into the bond, and originally I thought it would be for a much smaller amount than 100,000, but 100,000 makes it a little bit different, but, I mean, it could be a requirement, it doesn't sound like it's gonna be necessary, but I mean, that could be a condition, I suppose, but we'll have to work out the logistics of the bond. I mean, it can't be a cash bond because people forget, it's too big. And then the logistics of their renewing the bond year after year for something, somebody administratively has got to be on top of this, I would think. That was my concern about it.
Administratively, meaning the town
Yeah.
as well, yes. Okay.
I just wanted to raise the question so that we decided whether we wanted to proactively or not, since it was raised at the discussions on the public hearing. I don't feel strongly about it, and I
Okay.
just wanted anyone else who did.
I appreciate you,
They're saying that.
It's
Yeah.
also a question of who holds the bond, the leasee or the leaser.
right.
I'm sorry, was that?
No, we were just
Okay.
internal discussion, for lack of a better term.
So you're aware that on page 9I is the removal of the abandoned and stuff, and we could enforce that as a zoning action. I know what you're saying is that it's hard to enforce that 50 years down the line, when the property may have changed hands and communications has become obsolete, but,
So attachment A, it says recommend conditions of approval for the.
Can you talk into the microphone a little bit? Yeah, thanks.
So on attachment A, item 3, talks about the 6-foot chain link fence. Do we want to add black to that? Since this is the conditional use permit?
I'm gonna not steal the mayor's thunder and let her go ahead and get on that one.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm okay either way. That was. Yeah, I'm kind of okay with leaving council do that and just.
Okay.
Leaving it clean unless we've got some other recommendations that weren't discussed earlier.
There was I think, a mention of some kind of other fencing, and they mentioned that they could do that tonight, in terms
Oh,
of
yeah,
the.
there was a mention.
Screening, or
The
slats.
slats,
Yeah, the
slats.
if we could require those. I'm not sure if that would be more of the cup language. And then the only other thing, since
The
I'm already
concern, just to
talking-
keep in mind with the slats, is maintenance and what it'll look like in a few years, when it's been weathered and how.
And it's also, they're not substantially logging the lot.
They're what?
They're not doing clearance of the lot. They're doing selective removal for access road and service
Yeah.
of the equipment. Essentially, and I think that was where the comment of, well, the rest of the town has black fence because it kind of becomes invisible from a distance, so.
And I think that's
You
what
will
the
from
mayor
the
was getting to,
driveway, I
black
think.
instead of putting slats in it.
Pretty much.
A black
Yeah,
chain
yeah.
link fence.
Mr. Chairman, I think we
Yes.
should remember this is New Monrovia Road.
Correct.
This is not the highlight of aesthetic design within the town of Colonial Beach.
Yes, for all of us that use the rear entrance to Food Lion and see the back of all the restaurants, I understand what you're saying.
This'll look great.
Yeah. Yes.
I did have one last thing.
Yes.
When we were talking about the tower as a 100-foot tower, we talked about camouflaging
Yeah.
to kind of maintain the aesthetic or visualness, and now that we're considering a 150-foot one, and the concern before was reachability of the service, if it, diminishes, if it is camouflage, and now we're considering 150 foot, then would we want to require the camouflaging for how it looks?
My 2 cents is it makes it equally as,
I think the trees that are around it will camouflage it enough.
yeah.
Okay.
And I do have one more thing. So the golf cart path goes right by that. So as they're building this, are we gonna close that golf cart path, or?
Shouldn't have to, because if you look at the area that they're clearing, it's not by the golf cart path. There's,
Yeah, an erection will happen in one day. To literally come in and,
I just
pull
want
it
to
off
make
the
sure that
flatbed in a second.
they know that that is a well-used golf cart path that goes by that.
oh, luckily, that's the side that has the trees, I think.
Yeah.
So,
what's that? I'll show you where it is, yeah. Yeah, it's between McDonald's
It's
and
opposite the
back of the
access.
property. Going into the shopping center, yeah.
yeah.
No, we did, just so you know, we went ahead and sent letters of the public hearing to the properties on the other side of the golf cart path, even though it's private property owned by the shopping center, just to be safe, and haven't heard from anybody.
Okay. So, no amendments to the staff recommendations for the conditional use permit is what I'm hearing? Okay. So, ZTA 2601 is clean, ZTA 2602 is amended, and then substantial accord is clean, and then conditional use permit is clean as well. So now we have to decide if or what actions we're going to take. Start with, no, we have to do each one individually. So starting with 2601, we need a action. Okay. All right. We'll start with a roll call vote over with Ms. Barstow. Aye. Mr. Long? Aye. Mr. Hutchins? Aye. Ms. Adams? Mr. Malone? Chair votes aye. So we'll go ahead and make the recommendation to advance the zoning text amendment, ZTA 2601, the amendment to 8-2 of the Town of Colonial Beach zoning ordinance, communications facility to the town council as recommended by staff. So for the next, we have zoning text amendment, ZTA 2602, as amended. As we've discussed, there's, I think, 8 amendments.
So moved.
Second? All right, Mr. Barstow seconds, and then I'll start with Mr. Malone. Aye. Ms. Adams? Aye. Mr. Hutchins? Aye. Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Barstow? Aye. Chair votes aye. So we'll go ahead and, as amended, move forward the zoning text amendment, ZTA 2602, to town council. The next is a substantial accord determination, SA 2602.
Melissa, next.
for
That's
telecommunications
not well
facility.
worded, so I must have stopped mid-sentence.
Yeah.
Never mind.
So we can get
I would,
a motion? Okay, motion to proceed is written. Can I get a second? All right, Ms. Adams seconds. All right, where are we? We're going to start with Ms. Barstow on this one. Aye. Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hutchins?
Aye.
Ms. Adams? Aye. Mr. Malone? Aye. Chair votes aye. Substantial accord determination, SA 2602 for telecommunications facility is going to be moved forward to town council, the recommendations as written by staff. And the last is the conditional use permit, CUP 2602, as written by staff recommendation. Can I get a motion? Can I get a motion from Ms. Adams? Can I get a second? Second from Ms. Barstow.
no, never mind.
Roll call vote, starting with Mr. Malone. Ms. Adams?
It's okay.
Mr. Hutchins? Aye. Mr. Long?
Aye.
And Ms. Barstow? Aye. Chair votes aye. We'll go ahead and advance conditional use
Just a
permit.
clarification.
Yes.
That was not to recommend to council, that was to find substantial accord, correct?
No, that was the conditional use permit. The last one was the substantial accord.
That was to approve the substantial accord
Yes.
determination. That's not a recommendation for council to approve.
Okay,
They
that
accept
was-
as, yeah, so you,
Okay, so we did roll call vote prior to that for substantial accord determination. So
go up one.
for
Melissa.
administratively,
Melissa, one slide up.
okay, so just for my understanding, we're approving the substantial accord.
Right.
So that it can go forward to council.
No,
Yes?
I mean, you just approved that.
Okay, so
So,
council
yeah,
has no
that's not a
further action?
recommendation, that's your approval.
Okay. So just to clarify the record, Planning Commission unanimously voted to approve the substantial accord determination, SA 2602. Housekeeping.
It's actually, yours was 01, right? Mine's 02.
Yeah, the fire station
02,
was
sorry.
01?
Yeah.
Yep, okay, and we're 02 for the tower? Okay. You have an opportunity to correct it in the minutes next month.
Sorry.
All right, and then we just unanimously voted to approve the conditional use permit and to move it forward to council, the CUP 2602.
With the conditions and attachment A.
Ms. Barstow was the second, Ms. Adams was the mover. Okay. So that concludes Planning Commission actions number 12 on the agenda and moves us along to old business, which is the comprehensive plan update.
You've already gotten it.
Perfect.
We're gonna meet, there's a very good likelihood, if we want to get this done by December, that you're gonna have a special meeting or two.
Absolutely. In the past, we just added work sessions in between, so we can talk about how to do that administratively.
Okay.
Generally, we just kind of look around and say who's available on the odd Thursday.
Okay.
And we'll go ahead and start scheduling those as
My-
required.
My understanding is the mayor is interested in having a joint meeting, but it'd be like August because of the budget schedule and then summer vacation, so.
Right.
We won't be meeting jointly with them for the comp plan for some time.
Okay. And then if we were to do some kind of public outreach like we did with the activities with the Post-it notes that we did previously under Chair Thompson, would probably be something that we would look at doing in a regular meeting. We can
Yeah.
get with Ms. Odom offline and talk about how we
Yeah, as we
formatted that.
discussed before, it's not going to be a full-blown, as big of a deal as it was last time, but yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. Just during a regular meeting, advertise it as, so what we did is kind of in the second half, we put it up, had some small group breakout, audience
Right.
participation, interaction, got off the podium, talked to people, that kind of thing, just as a single point, once we've gotten to ideas about some of the revisions that we have to make statistically, and then any other additions and modifications we want for that update. So that we can kind of engage a little bit. And then that concludes comprehensive plan update, no new business, and that leaves us to adjourning the Town of Colonial Beach Planning Commission meeting for April 9th, 2026 at 9:19 PM.
My record is out the window tonight.